Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I'm so Ray. My videos are about love, infinity, creation, energy, because we're infinite love, infinite energy, infinite creation. This is who we are. We're the human race. We're incredible. We're an incredible species. We're an amazing species. I'm making this series, and this video is part of it. It's about infinite virtual cycles. And what they are. So this infinite virtual cycle is why and how. Why, how. These two coming together as one and creating infinity as we know it in the way of our mind. Because as we know, language is the way we communicate. We interpret meaning. So we decode and encode language. And we do that with our brains. Our brains are this processor. That's all the brain is. The brain is a processor. And it decodes and encodes. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. And those are signals that move across the body. And what is it encoding and what is it decoding? Well, it's encoding memories and decoding them. And they get stored in our DNA. That's where they get stored, in our DNA. At the cellular level. That's where we store everything, in our DNA. DNA memories, everything that we live and experience, or events and experiences, are information, right, sets that come into our mind in the way of senses, because we experience them through our senses. That's why the brain is located here, because the brain has all the senses around them. 2 ears, polarity, right? You need two, so we hear. 2 eyes, polarity, so we see. A mouth, right? So we can taste, and there's all sorts of the above, below, the gums, you know, the lips. It's all dual. The tongue itself has two lobes. Okay, so you see, and then we smell, and smell is 2 nostrils. Right, we smell, and then our face has this touch, and the whole body has that touch everywhere. So you see. So what is the brain doing? Well, the brain is decoding and encoding everything that we perceive through our senses. And all the information is signaled to the body as a result. It's signaled. It's signaled. And then the body does its thing, whatever it does. But the memories per se, they're not stored in the brain. The memories are stored in our DNA. Okay, there is brain cells in our brain, obviously. Our brain is made out of cells. And these cells have DNA in them. So obviously brain cells have storage in them, because the DNA memory is like where we store things, everything, all our memories, all our experiences, all our events, and store in our DNA. So there is storage in the brain, because there is cells in the brain, and therefore there is DNA inside each cell. But you see, we don't only have DNA in our brains, we have DNA in all of our body, because we are body cells. We are the human body, the space structure density of the human body is cells that come together in the way of the body. All the organs, all the glands, and everything, right? Everything that makes the human body. Bones, all that, right? The systems, right, of the body. So, okay, but all of these are cells. Different densities of cells, right? Different resonance, because each of them come to be something unique, right? But each of them has DNA in them, DNA memories, which means that everything is stored at once simultaneously in every cell. So that's how it works, because it's decentralized. You cannot just store things in one location, because then if what happens, cells perish, right? That's why we have regeneration, cell regeneration, healing, rejuvenation, all that. Cell regeneration, the telomeres, all these components of the cell, right? Rejuvenation, regeneration. This is part of the cell, the healing process. The human body heals. But because of that, you cannot just have things stored in a localization. This idea of localization, there is this idea of localization. The locality of the brain and everything is like this primitive idea that everything is located in a place and that's where it is. That's not the way it is, because we are decentralized and distributed in nature. This is who we are as a species, meaning that every memory is stored in all the cells of the body, including the brain, including the organs, including everything. Every cell of the body stores everything. Why? Because in that way you have decentralization, you have distribution. So all the memories are stored safely everywhere. So there's no single point of failure. You know, if the servers goes kaput, then what happens? The data is lost? No, because everything is distributed. You see, everything is distributed. So in that way, the system is resilient, us as a species, because the memories are stored in our DNA, which is contained in every cell of the body. So everything that becomes a memory, everything that is events and experiences because of our sensory perception, who we are as a species, that's what the brain does. That's the function of the brain. So what the brain does is that, it's precisely that. So the brain does that. That's the only function of the brain. The brain is there for that very reason, to process all the sensory perception in the way of events and experiences that become DNA memories that are stored in our cells of the body, and it sends that through the nervous system. Right? That's what it does. And it does it in an incredible way, because that's why the brain is incredible. Everything about the human body is incredible. Because the way it does it in a distributed and decentralized way. So all those memories that are decoded and encoded need to be, they need the brain to be decoded and encoded. That's why, the brain is the processor. It processes everything. All the signals of the body in a big way are essentially kind of like the brain is the distributor in a way, right? But it's just the process is decoding and encoding. Decoding and encoding. That's all it does. Decoding and encoding. Decoding and encoding, decoding and encoding, processing all these memories through our sensory perceptions. That's why the brain is located where it is, because it needs to be closest to the senses. Because that's how we absorb everything. Everything that we perceive comes in through the senses. So the brain is right there, decoding and encoding that. And then that moves through the body immediately, through the nervous system, signals. And then why is it all through the body in the way of signals? Because that decoding, that encoding, that processing gets encoded where? In all the body cells. Because inside the body cells is the DNA, and the DNA is infinite in nature. So it has infinite storage, if you want to think about it in those terms. So it can store an infinite number of memories. Why? Because this is the way we have evolved. This is the decentralization and distribution of the human body. So the DNA memories are stored in all the cells of the body, all the memories, all the events, all the experiences. That's why we are who we are, an incredible species. You see, there's no single point of failure because everything is distributed and decentralized. It's the nature of who we are as a species. And all this comes together as one, the brain, the heart, the lungs, all the organs and glands. And they just have this infinite resonance of signals. Right. And what's the heart is that the heart generates the electromagnetic field that allows all those singularities to occur. So everything happens and we are who we are. Conscious self-awareness, sentience, intelligence, capable of thinking, capable of creating, capable of sensing. All that we do. So, but remember, brain cells is everything is current, right? In the body, we are in energy. That's what we are. The highest energy density that there is. So if you think about of the brain, so the brain is current, right? It's signals. It's the neurotransmission, right? And this neurotransmission is what we call synapse. You see, it's the movement of electricity from neuron to neuron, from the dendrite to the axiom. I think it's called axons, something like that. So you see the energy moves from it's electric current. It's moving, it's signals, yeah. It's what it is, what it does. It's a human species, it's who we are as a species, it's our nature. It's our nature. It's our nature. Okay, it's our nature. So you see, so then you understand who we are, right? We're why, how. Because this video is infinite virtuous cycle of why and how. These two, the duality principles, right? That come together as one. The duality principles that come together as one, because you go why and you go how, which is a polarity. Why? Because remember, the brain is a processor, right? It's what it does. It's processing the sensory perception and encodes and decodes all that information. And it's energy, it's currency, right? It's current, it's electric, it's signaling through the synapse of the brain, right? Neuroplasticity as we know it. So it has a lot of circuitry. Right, is generated as a result because it's paths, right? It's paths that we develop, and those become essentially the way these messages are moved effectively and efficiently, right? Because it's just the way it is, because it's the nature of neuroplasticity. And the brain is neuroplastic in nature. It's this ability for, because when this information moves, right, it creates this it creates this mechanism that essentially allows these neurons to interact in that way, and it generates patterns in the brain. And those patterns are crucial because it's what allows us to be efficient in the way we do things as a species as we develop. Okay. That's the value of neuroplasticity of the brain. The brain is super plastic in that nature. It's malleable. So, okay. So then why is this so important? Because remember, all this signaling is language. It's a language. Because remember, language is information, that is data, input, output, encoding, decoding, meaning in the way of current signals, right? And that moves all over the body in the way of the nervous system. And all the cells are communicated all the information, right? So remember, it's this infinite virtuous cycle of why and how, because why, how is a word. Why, how is a term. It's two words together, right? And that's language. Because our brain, that's what neuroplasticity is. Our brain has this ability to understand things in the way of language. So we can make meaning, make sense of things. Making sense, making meaningful connections, patterns, which is what neuroplasticity is. Neuroplasticity is patterns, right, in the brain. So that's what language is. That's why, you know, when you learn a language, say, for example, you communicate, say, your mother tongue. So you talk about it, and you're not thinking about it, right? That's what neuroplasticity is. You don't have to engage into like actively thinking about something because you already created the neuroplasticity, meaning that the body just does it. Like language is that, right? So you speak. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. Sometimes you can do that, but naturally you're not. You just talk and you're communicating what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're doing. So that's neuroplasticity. So the brain is that. So the brain is a processor that needs a language, like everything. It's a natural language, right? The brain encodes and decodes natural language. And the way of the language is whatever the symbology is, the patterns that we absorb through our senses, and the meaning that we give to those patterns, right? The symbology of the patterns, because they have meaning attached to it based on what? All our experiences and all our events, so we can actually start to make sense of reality for what it is, right? Make sense of reality for what it is. Because we add meaning to words, to language, to things, to everything. Everything has meaning, right? Everything there is. And that's what the processing of the brain is, the neuroplasticity of it is. The input, output, right? Decoding and coding. And all those signals are moved through the body and they're stored in our DNA. DNA memories. Everywhere. Including the brain, but everywhere, because each cell stores every memory. That way it's distributed and decentralized. So what's why, how? Well, this infinite virtuous cycle of why and how coming together as one word, why, how. Which is this, so it's this thought pattern, right? Because why has a lot of meaning in it. That we as a society, in terms of language, meaning, symbology, patterns, sensing, have given it to it through our evolution as a species, all the events, all the experiences, all the memories that create the culture, that create the language, right? In this case, the English language. But why that word exists in all languages, right? It's not unique to English. It's just I speak English, that's all. But you see, because the brain understands it, so it's just that. But then it's the second word, which is how. And then there is all this meaning, all these patterns, all this neuroplasticity, all this culture, all these events, all these experiences, all these memories, all this everything attached, all this symbology attached to the word how as well, which is the language that we understand when we speak in English, say. So it's the way we communicate, because our brain is decoding and encoding and processing the information, the signals, through the synapse. And that is on the way of a language, right? And that we sense it. How do we sense a language? Well, because we hear it through our senses. We see it when we read it, right? We speak it with our mouths, right? So we can see it by reading it. We can hear it by listening it. And we can speak it with our mouths, right? Because we make sound waves with our mouths. Waveforms, and these waveforms are decoded and encoded by the brain, right? So that's the language, you see, because those words, there's patterns in them, and that's the information that we're decoding. Is information, is data, and that data is energetic in nature. It's a waveform. When I'm making sounds, I'm making a waveform, and then that's a waveform that gets to someone else's ears or my own, and then the brain decodes that, and there is meaning, you see. That's what neuroplasticity. So the brain is that. The brain is a big decoder, a big encoder. It's just a processor. And then everything that is encoded and decoded automatically is signaled everywhere. So it's stored in all these cells, everything. That's what we do. The brain is an incredible mechanism because that's what it does. It encodes everything and decodes everything in all the cells, all the memories, because of the sensory perception. That's what it does. That's the brain. It's an incredible organ, the brain. And there is 2 glands in the brain. We got the pituitary gland and we got the pineal gland, you see. And these glands are fundamental because they have what is called piezoelectricity or piezoelectricity, which is the crystallic electricity that comes as a result of the information of the glands, because these glands create crystallic molecules. And these crystallic molecules, when they interact with synapse electricity, they generate this beautiful, beautiful pattern in our minds that is piezoelectric in nature, meaning is crystallic, which means that we are conducting and tapping into higher energies beyond that of what we perceive with our normal senses. That's what the third eye is. The third eye is the third eye is the pituitary gland and the pineal gland interacting together as one. You see, it's this duality of this infinite virtuous cycle of pituitary gland and pineal gland, and getting all this currency, all this signaling through all the neuroplasticity of the brain, all these thought patterns. And when this energy, this signaling hits the gland, it stimulates it. And this gland, it's a piezoelectric gland. It generates crystallic molecules, DMT and all sorts, right? And then that gives us visions. It's beyond our senses, you see. It's what they call the sixth sense, right? That's what they say. The third eye is the sixth sense. Because it's that. So we're going beyond the traditional senses. And that the brain does that too. Because it needs to process that, right? It needs to process piezoelectric currency. Signaling. Crystallic in nature. All these waveforms that are only perceived by these glands that secrete them. So the brain needs to be able to interact with those. Right. Crystallic molecules that need the electricity from the synapse of the brain. So when the electricity hits the crystals, then you have all piezoelectricity which is all this beautiful, and it is all happening at the pineal gland and at the pituitary gland. They're coming together as one, and they start with, that's what we see, you know, as forms that are like, oh, sixth sense type of situations. Beyond the five senses, right? Is what's beyond. And that's because we have this ability, because these glands interact in that way as the receptors and the senders and receivers of this level of frequency, which is higher. It's an intuition, insight, instinct, beyond the five senses. Everything that is beyond the five senses has to do with the pituitary and the pineal gland interacting in this infinite cycle of piezoelectric currency. And this electricity that is generated is crystallic in nature, because that's what piezoelectricity is, crystallic in nature. It's crystals. It's the pressure of the crystals interacting, that pressure, because it's generating crystallic molecules, crystal-like molecules, DMT, and all these different molecules, right, that are essentially there created. And then when the thought pattern hits it, then you have this vision beyond. It's like senses, intuition, insight, and we call that the third eye, right? And when you get all this light, right, think about it, when you get all this light from the sun straight into our iris, all that energy, where does it go? To all the cells of the body. But if you're consciously addressing them, then they can all go to the pineal gland. The pineal gland and the pituitary gland, they both love it because it's straight hit, right? Because it's in the brain. Boom. They get that energy, and then because they generate crystallic molecules, DMT and the like, so you can THC and the like, right? You know the molecules I'm referring to, right? These are crystallic molecules. That's why when you look at the buds of, you know, indica and sativa, they're crystallic in nature, aren't they? They have crystals in them, don't they? Why? Because the crystallic nature of these molecules, THC and CBD and all these different cannabinoids, right? Cannabinoids and all that. So, well, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, in nature, they secrete these crystallic molecules that are DMT, THC, and all that. When, you know, that's why when you do those things, you're like, oh, what's this? Because it's beyond the senses, right? So you're perceiving beyond, and that's what the third eye is. So the third eye is when you get all this energy from the sun, right? When you get all this energy from the sun straight into your body, then that energy hits the glands, and then it secretes all these piezoelectric phenomena, which is crystallic in nature, all these molecular crystals, which are THC, DMT, and the like. So then we can have these visions. Sometimes we call it hallucinations, but in reality they're visions of beyond the senses that we comprehend, because it's wave patterns, waveforms beyond the traditional senses. But you see, they still in the brain, so the brain can decode and encode those and process them in the way of patterns and meanings, right? Structures. So, okay, so what's the brain then? So the brain is this language processor. That's what it is. The brain is a big language processor, the way of neuroplasticity. So then again, it doesn't matter if it comes from like this third eye, the sixth sense and beyond, which is the pituitary gland and the pineal gland interacting with crystallic molecules, right, that get hit by this energy. And then, because what happens when you hit the crystal with energy? Well, you take a crystal, right, a prism, and hit it with light. What do you get? A rainbow, don't ya? We get a rainbow out of this crystal because it's the light spectrum, right? So that's essentially what these crystals are there for. So it allows us to see beyond the light spectrum. So, okay, that makes more sense if I explain it this way. So these crystallic molecules, DMT, THC, and the like, what are there for is to go beyond the traditional senses that we see. The light that we see with our eyes has a light spectrum. You know, the highest is violet, the lowest is red. right? And everything in between is the light that we see with our senses. I mean, sense of it. And light is energy, yeah. That's what it is. That's why we look at the sky and the sky looks blue, right? Why? Because it's blue light. It's the light that reflects in the atmosphere because of the electrogravitics differential. And then that's what we see, is the light that we see. Hey, simple as that. So then violet light is this highest, and above that is gamma, and all that, they all come from the sun, right? Light comes from the sun. So then again, you see crystals is that, so it's the best example then. So a crystal, you hit a crystal with light and then you see a person, right? You see all the colors coming out of it. And these colors, right, these beautiful colors are the light spectrum what we see with the senses, with the eyes, and we make sense of it, right? And we give a meaning, language, right? Encoding, decoding, processing. But then think about the pineal gland and the pituitary gland and these crystallic-like glands, that the whole existence, they are there just to secrete molecules that are crystallic in nature. And these molecules are DMT, THC, and the like, right? So why? Because when you hit it with light, it's crystallic. It generates patterns. And these patterns are crystallic beyond the spectrum of our senses, the traditional senses. So it's all the intuitions, all the visions, all the insights beyond what we can perceive with our normal senses, you see? And that's what that is that's why it's crystallic. Because when you hit the crystal, then it creates all this. And the way we interpret that is like, oh, okay, so you see, it's beyond. It's not necessarily what you see with your senses, is beyond the senses. Because there is light beyond the senses. Gamma and all that, beyond violet. And by having an open third eye, meaning you stare at the sun and the energy comes and hits it, and you love it, I know you love sunlight hitting the pineal gland, for example, and the pituitary gland, then what happens is that you have all these revelations, don't you? Eureka moments and the like. It's all this creation, right? Because you're downloading information out of what? Well, what creates the cellular structure of the pineal gland that creates that crystal-like nature of molecules, and the pituitary gland? The DNA. So you see, you're downloading these memories from your DNA, right? But once you download these memories from your DNA memory and then they happen, what happens as a result? Well, all these memories, right, with events or experiences in our life, they become memories stored in our, all decentralized, right, in all our cells, and the brain is processing that and moves in and decodes it and encodes them. So the brain is incredible. Okay, so why am I saying this? Because that's language, right? It's language. We make meaning. We're having these, visions, this intuition, this insight beyond the normal traditional senses because of DMT and THC and all these different molecules, these crystal-like molecules. So by hitting it with the sunlight and by hitting it with all these waves, our own thoughts, these synapses of it, then we have this piezoelectric phenomena that generates light beyond the spectrum of the crystal. And that is what we tap into this, and that happens to be in our DNA. So we're going beyond the traditional, beyond the senses. That's what they always say, that the third eye is that, it's the sixth sense, is beyond our senses, is that intuition beyond. What's beyond that we cannot see with our eyes, hear, touch, but it's beyond, but it is real, right? It certainly is. It comes from our DNA because it creates the molecules in the first place for us to have those visions, right? So that's how it works. Okay, so why is this important? Because how is this? Right? How is this? How is this? It's this infinite virtuous cycle of creation. Right? Why and how? Because how is language, you see? Natural language, right? The brain is a natural language processor that encodes and decodes. So how is this meaning? Right, is why, and why is infinity. Why? Because why is reason, is root, is origin, is genesis, is because, is the source. Why? You ask why and you get to infinity always. Right, spherical in nature. Why? Because our consciousness and self-awareness has developed to interpret and understand what infinity is. Because we are infinite in nature, is our nature. Our nature is infinity, you see. Our nature is infinity. So why is that? And how is how you go about infinity. The actions, right? The how, the principles, right? The methods, everything that we do. So it's why, how together as one. So when your brain processes why, how in the way of knowledge, what is that? Well, it's this mechanism that your brain is tapping into now, because your brain is using the language of infinity. Because why, how is the mechanism of infinity. You see, why, how is the mechanism of infinity. That's what why, how is. You see, and when that thought form, that pattern, that waveform inhabits your brain, and there is neuroplasticity around why, how, so your whole brain becomes why, how centric. Your ideas are why, how centric with their infinite ideas, the spherical ideas, telemetric thinking, right? Duality principles, proto-meta systems properties analysis. All these notions that are fundamental in the 21st century because this is who we are. Then what's happening? Well, your whole brain gets enabled by the pituitary gland and the pineal gland, because all these molecules, they're naturally created. DMT, THC, the reason why you can consume these crystals outside the body and is because the body can interact with them, because the body has an ability to create them. So it has a natural way to, essentially what it does, it breaks them down. When they enter the body breaks them down, right? And say, these crystals as that. But we naturally generate those in our glands. In this case, the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. That's where we generate these crystallic molecules. So essentially what is happening is why, how is that? Why, how is this thought form that is crystallic in nature, that gets straight into our brains, and then that energy is just like beyond the senses because it's infinity, you see. So that's what why, how is. Why, how is a thought structure. Is this meaning, all this symbology attached in this meaning of this word why, how, which is everything that there is, because infinity is everything that there is. So when your brain is, that's why how is the fifth primary element of compass, because we manifest it with our consciousness of self-awareness, with our heart, with our love. And with our love, we just manifest it, right? We manifest it. And how do we manifest it? With our actions, you see, because then we have all these ideas coming out of infinity. But in which way? Well, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. And what are these two? Why, how? That's what they are, the representation of it. Why is the pineal gland and how is the pituitary gland, if you want to think in those terms. So these come together as one, and it generates all this knowledge. Because then again, when you tap into infinity, what are you tapping into? That is that unknown to you. You start to explore that something that is infinite. And the way we process it is with thoughts and consciousness and visions, and dreams and ideas, imagination, you see. But where is this coming from? It's not coming out of it's not that we're catching it in the air. It's inside our DNA structure. Because this energy, this waveform now goes straight into our DNA structure of what? The pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the brain cells, and all the body cells. And we tap into that DNA memory. And that DNA memory is that what we tap into. And what we tap into, what does it lead to? What we call creativity, imagination, right? Creation, all these. That is this infinite nature of our brain to be conscious and self-aware and intelligent and think anyway. So when you engage with why, how is this crystallic thought form that essentially what it's doing is tapping into the crystallic molecules of the body and hitting them with this energy. And when it does, then your DNA starts to tap into infinity itself. And then these DNA memories are downloads. We have memory recall. And how do you do that? You need love, because love is the highest energy of creation, right? So when you love, then that energy is there, and then why how it does its thing. It does its thing, and then the memory downloads happen. DNA memory stored in our DNA, because our DNA doesn't only store our memories, but it stores all the memories of all the humans that have ever lived within our bodies, and all the events and experiences that they ever lived. So you see, we can tap into any of that. And because love is purposeful, we can channel our love to specific purposes. So when you use why, how for that mechanism, this thought form, this combination of infinity as one, why and how, then we start to have the most incredible manifestations of our own creations. Right? And then we just start to do incredible things. So that which is who we are as a species. That's what the sun is, right? The sun is this energy, right? So that sunlight and love, infinite virtuous cycle, as one, just going to infinity, right? And the energy outside us, the energy of the central sun, and the energy from our heart, from within, coming together as one, and unlocking our DNA structure, unlocking it. And then we just tap into our DNA memories and everything. So what's why how? Well, why how is precisely that. It's understanding these principles. And when you engage in that thought form, this waveform, this language, right, this intuitive language of infinity, then your brain changes, because it's like, once, this ancient saying, like, once an idea is inside your brain, that's it. You cannot delete it out of it. That's who you are. It changes your molecular structure. Okay, because you're evolving, because you're getting the light from the sun, and then you're getting the understanding of love as the highest energy, and those two interactions with why how is just this powerful mechanism. It's powerful. It's infinite in nature, because why how is infinity itself in language processing methods. So the brain is a language reader, right? That's what it is. Decodes and codes language, meaning, patterns, symbology that we attach to things through events and memories and experiences, right? So that's what it is. That's why, you learn language, and then that's why you have an accent. That's why you sound the way you do. That's why you use the words you use, because it's what you know. It's what's surrounding you. And then you generate all the neuroplasticity. So when you add why how to it as a mechanism, then everything evolves, because it's an evolution mechanism. It's infinity itself. It's evolving your thought structures, because you start to ask why of everything and how to go about it. That's why how is it manifests infinity, because it is infinity in the thought pattern. You see, because what is the brain doing? Well, the brain is decoding infinity. When you start to use why how as a mechanism, then your brain is decoding infinity. You see, that's what it's doing. Encoding and decoding. Because what is it decoding? Well, it's decoding the information that is being pulled out of our DNA memories, so we can make sense of it, right? And then once you use that memory, then what is that memory there for? Well, to teach us, so we can take action here and now. And then the brain then encodes that new message, the new creation, the creativity, the ingenuity, whatever it is, the imagination. And then where is it stored? Well, then again, back to the DNA memory pools of all the body. And the body moves it, right? The brain does. That's what it does. So what's the heart's role in all this? Because remember, the heart is the singularity, right? It's the epicenter. It's the pulse of life. It's the pulse of creation. So the heart has neurons in it. So all these neurons, right? You have all these neurons in the heart. Why? Because that signal is, those neurons are communicating straight with the brain. Because what is that? Because the signaling is saying, look, this is where we at. This is the intention. This is where the love is going. This highest energy that I'm generating, which is love, I'm telling the brain, this is what we're going to do with this love energy. The spherical energy that I'm generating called love, the highest energy that we can generate as biological life forms. So that the neuron goes and talks to the brain, and then because it's connected to the nervous system, but it's because the neurons in the heart, they have their own synapse, right? And that synapse is in sync with the synapse of the brain. You see, it's happening already. So it's straight in the heart, so it's direct. So you get the information direct from the source, right? From the source, the heart. And the heart is signaling. And what is it signaling? Well, it's purposeful love. It's purposeful energy, intelligent, because it has neurons in it. You see, it has the ability to decode, encode, process. So it's saying this is what we're gonna do with this love. I love writing, so I'm gonna write. So that's, and the love, the energy of love is when I write, I feel good, right? So that is it. So that energy, and then what is the brain doing? If you're writing in terms of why, how, like I do. So then what are you doing? Well, you're having all this energy, why, how energy that is using all this piezoelectricity, all these crystallic molecules in the brain, and that go beyond the traditional senses. So that energy taps into what? The DNA structure. So we go beyond it, and then we tap into infinity, because remember, the DNA is the mechanism, is where everything is encoded, but it's not only encoded in the human body because everything is centralized and distributed. It's connected to infinity itself. So all the organism, all the bodies, all the humans have DNA structure in them, and all that information is there. So it's fed across it, and also goes beyond it. It goes. That's why the sun of the energy of the sun is so crucial, because you're getting the energy from infinity itself. So when you're getting the energy of the sun through your eyes, and you use that energy plus love, and then it's purposeful and it's why, how, then that use that piezoelectricity. This piezoelectricity is crystallic in nature that goes beyond the traditional senses, and then we tap into infinity itself through our senses and through our minds and through our cells and the DNA memories. And then we have to have downloads of these memories, ancient distant memories. And if it's a full new invasion, something that is not created by us yet, because it's an infinite number of creations that we haven't created yet, right? Because that's the nature of infinity. It's infinite. Then what we would do, we use that energy purposely to create that. But sometimes in order for us to create, we need to have foundations, which is pretty much the case. So we can use that energy to tap into our DNA memory, so we can have those foundations out of these memories that we're reliving, recasting. And we use that as a thought pattern that gets decoded and then encoded into a new memory in our lives. And then that is what allows us to use that as a building block. So we use why, how as a building block, and we call it creativity and creation and all that. Whatever it is, could be anything, whatever you create, right? Because of the singularity, because you have this infinite virtuous cycle of why and how coming together as one, the polarity of it. And this leads to this infinite virtuous cycle that leads to this singularity, which is the epicenter of everything, all, which is what the language of why, how, which is infinity itself that we process with our brains, decode and encode, and then it goes into the cells, and then it just acts as this. You see, why, how is love, is the highest energy, and why, how is this, because his love is the proxy, right? So it's the why, how is the key that unlocks the DNA structure to infinity, because his love, his purposeful love that is put in there with the sunlight and everything, and then the pineal glands and the pituitary gland, and everything starts to work together as one. And then it just supercharges everything, and then we just poop. Evolution. Who we are. The human race. So you see, this is what this virtuous cycle is. This is a beautiful, wonderful virtuous cycle of infinity. It's infinite. All virtuous cycles are infinite in nature. But this one is particularly important. We're all important, but this one is very important because it's why and how together as one, the way we process information and meaning in our brains. You see, so we can make sense of things, so we can evolve into what? Infinity. It's like the prism being hit by the light, right? You see the spectrum. Same. So the crystal does that, so we see what's beyond, right? What's beyond. Beyond the what? The light spectrum. And that's what evolution is, because as we start to evolve, we start to see beyond violet light. We start to see gamma. It's part of the evolution process. Because your eyes adapt to this new reality, right? So we start to interpret gamma and see gamma. That's an example. And because now we can see gamma, we can interact with gamma. And by interacting with gamma, we're conscious that we can do that. And by interacting with gamma, then we become this new species, which is what we are. You see, because gamma rays are there. They're constantly beaming the planet. So as you start to develop the structures within it with your crystallic molecules, then you can start to see gamma. Right? Gamma is this beautiful light form. The way gamma is like a combination of purple and violet. It's very dense. And you see it everywhere. So that's what gamma is. Is this beautiful, because it's higher than violet, right? It has to be beyond. So it's a color, it's a new color beyond the light spectrum, right? It's beautiful. Gamma is beautiful. And it changes. It's a plasma-like in nature. It's like plasma. Gamma is like plasma, right? It's energy that it morphs into anything. And it's not only like color, it could also be very bright and white, or all sorts of colors, because that's the nature of plasma. Plasma is everything, because plasma is the state in between all states, solid, liquid, and gaseous, right? So plasma is the electricity, is the energy of creation itself at that scale. So that's what gamma is in a big way. Gamma and all these rays beyond the traditional light spectrum that we see, they're plasma-like in nature, right? So, and then that's part of our new reality, interacting with plasma, because there is plasma in us, plasma everywhere. Plasma is a natural state. So by understanding plasma, you see, then why can we see plasma now? Because of our pituitary glands, because of our pineal gland, and this infinite virtual cycle of pituitary and gland together, because of how. So we see that with the energy of the sun and the love of our hearts, then we start to see beyond, which is what that is, seeing beyond, sixth sense, right? Beyond the traditional senses. And plasma is that. Plasma is that. Plasma is all the states at once, right? All the states at once. Liquid, gaseous, and solid. All these three states at once, that's plasma. Is the in-between state, is electrogravitics, is telemetry, is electromagnetism, you see, is beyond the light spectrum, is that, you know, is the energy that you don't see but you feel and you sense. Like love, right? You sense love, right? But you cannot see love per se, but it's an energy. But that energy is plasma. Think about it in that way. It's beyond the light spectrum that we can see, but it exists, it's real. It's infinity itself. So but when we evolve as a species, which we all there already, we just have to love with our hearts. So when we do that and stare at the sun, when we do that, then we start to see all the plasma everywhere, which is what is outside the light spectrum that traditionally we shouldn't be able to see. But once you unlock your DNA structure, then we see everything beyond the light spectrum, because we can see everything, and you can see it, and it's beautiful, it's very bright, it's wonderful, and we all humans have access to this. This is not a unique thing to me. We all human, we all have a human heart. You see, it's a natural step. So you see, how is this mechanism? How is this infinite virtuous mechanism of creation? That's why the piezoelectric nature of crystallic molecules. What are they? With their heat, right? And that heat, that's pressure. The pressure hits them. And the energy, right? The thought, the waveform, right? The synapse hits it. The sunlight, particularly. It creates all this pressure within the crystals. And then that releases that energy. That releases that crystallic energy. That is beyond the spectrum, and that's what we call plasma. And then that is everywhere. It's everywhere. Because remember, everything that is real that we sense with our feelings, our senses, we have senses, right? So we can perceive and sense. So we know what love is because we sense it, but we don't know, we can see it. But it's real. But the way we know it exists is because we have all these mechanisms inside our body, biochemical mechanisms, neurotransmitters, we have hormones, we have pheromones. You see, it's all the glands and all the organs interacting. Signaling, electrical current, right? Electromagnetic in nature is biochemical. But then plasma is that being able to see it beyond sensing them and feeling them is the next step. So you can see gamma rays now. You see gamma rays as a result, because remember, piezoelectric, right? Crystallic in nature, DMT and all these molecules that allow us, and THC, that allow us to precisely do that. tap into that so we can see everything that is beyond the traditional senses. Because this is a step in evolution. This is who we are as a species. This is our nature. We're not only this, we are beyond this. You see, we're infinite. Infinity is that we are biology, but the infinite biology is that is energy density, so we can evolve. Our biology is perfect because it allows us to evolve into infinity. So we can go beyond the traditional and go into higher levels of frequency, and that is who we are. And this is what we are. And why? How is this mechanism that allows you and us, everyone, to do so? Virtuous infinite cycle. It's infinite virtuous cycle of why, how. Why and how coming as one and allowing us to see beyond. Feel beyond, sense beyond. Everything beyond of the traditional, what we see. Right? Because that's evolution. It's going beyond the limits. Because that's what infinity is, right? Infinity is precisely that. Infinity is precisely that. Infinity is endless, boundless, limitless, forever, eternal. So because of it, that's the nature, then we are the biology of infinity ourselves. So it is within us to go beyond. It is because we're eternal ourselves. We're forever, we're infinite, we're boundless, we're limitless. And the way our brain is to understand this, right? Decode it, encode it, understand it, process it, right? Make sense of it. Meaning, right? So we can engage our emotions and understanding on why, how is this mechanism? Why, how is the mechanism that does it? So our brain structure, our cellular structure, the biological scale of our cellular structure evolves because our DNA allows it to do so because of the mechanism of infinity that is within us. Because we evolve in the proximity of the central sun of the universe. And by being that energy of infinity, we ourselves are that, but at the biological scale. And because our DNA has been dormant for so long, we kind of we enter this state of amnesia where we didn't know who we are. But now we do. So it's different, you see. So now we understand our capabilities, our abilities as a species, because we're infinite in nature. You see, because when you start to manifest plasma, and then you start to see plasma, and then you start to see gamma rays, and everything beyond gamma, because there's an infinite number of frequencies of energy beyond gamma, that's just the beginning, you see. Gamma is just the beginning. Gamma is like the next step, right? So you start to see beyond gamma, and everything that is beyond gamma, everything that is beyond gamma, you heard that noise? Everything that is beyond gamma, right? Everything that is beyond gamma. Plasma, right? Infinity itself. And we can do that with our biology. This is what we do with our biology. It's gamma. Beyond it, we go beyond gamma. Gamma is just the beginning. Gamma is just the beginning. Because it's infinite. And this is who we are. So the human body is this. That's why we're infinite and eternal. Because we manifest ourselves at any density. Because our consciousness and self-awareness. Because we're the consciousness and self-awareness of infinity itself, you see. And because we're that, then we can do anything we want, really. Because there's no limits, because we're infinite. So it's gamma. So that's the next step. Gamma is the next step, seeing gamma, which is the energy from the sun. Seeing it through our senses, because our senses evolve, our brain evolves, our organs evolve. Because that's what our biology is. Our biology allows us to do precisely this. To be beyond. To become beyond. Because we are beyond, we're infinity. We're everything. You see, so is that. So it starts with that, plasma and gamma, but then it's everything beyond, because that's just the beginning, right? It's the beginning of everything that's unknown. And this is why we were able, and we still are, to create universes with our consciousness and self-awareness, because we're so close to the sunlight as a species, who we are. Who we are. So you see, it's follow your heart, signs and signals. And why, how is this infinite virtuous cycle of creation? It's why and how together as one, creating to infinity. Because this is who we are, this is our nature. This is our nature. See, beyond the spectrum. What's beyond is infinity, who we are, because it's our DNA. And it starts with that, by the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, because of the crystallic nature that allows us to see beyond the light spectrum. The sixth sense, whatever, third eye, beyond it, right? And that's everything that is gamma and everything above gamma, because gamma is just the beginning of what is there. Above gamma. Above gamma. Okay. And that's it. It's infinite love, infinite energy. Sunlight, love on that. Coming together as one, and the third eye, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland together as one, creating that polarity of going beyond. So we ourselves manifested, because that's the thing. See, we manifest energy with our own thoughts and consciousness. So, because that's what we do. So by tapping into gamma, by tapping into plasma, we ourselves manifested. That's what we do. This is who we are as a species. So it's understanding this. Okay, so remember, this video is this infinite virtual cycle of why and how together as one, leading to infinite evolution, conscious infinite evolution, because our brain has the ability to process infinity now. Encoded and decoded through our senses, so we can go beyond our senses, because infinity is that. And what allows us to go beyond is the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, and the crystal-like molecules that are created at the epicenter of these glands. And we hit them with energy from the sun and energy from the heart, and then that's it. So that's how we do it. Okay, the DNA memory, we unlock it, and we do what we do. Okay, as infinite eternal creators, what we do, we are an incredible species. We are an amazing species because we're the center of the universe. This is where we're located. So we're consuming all that energy from the central sun, which is way beyond the light spectrum, right? Way beyond gamma. Gamma is just the beginning. It's an infinite number of frequencies, right, of energy. Infinite. There's no end to it. So at this stage of evolution, we just call them those. But it's beyond that. Everything is infinite. Everything. Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. Remember who we are. We're the Republic of Planet Earth, with the citizenry of the Republic of Planet Earth. This is who we are. We're humanity. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. We're a benevolent species, a loving species, a heart-based species, a heartful species. We live to love and we love to live. Lives of purpose, lives of meaning. Meaningful lives, purposeful lives. The purposeful life is a life of purpose. Happy life, the pursuit of happiness. It's encoded in our DNA, so we are. When we love, we feel great. Love life. Okay? We're compass, we're sun, we're identity and true self, we're purpose, we're time and energy, we're action. This is who we are. We're why, how, we flow with true north and destination, and we're compass. We open our eyes, open our minds, open our hearts, and stare at the sun. Open the portal and build the bridge and evolve to infinity. Beyond gamma. Gamma is just the beginning. Plasma is just the beginning. Manifesting those without conscious thoughts, consciousness and self-awareness and thoughts is just the beginning. Because we're infinite in nature. We have created everything. We're infinity ourselves. With the biological expression of infinity, this is who we are. Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind.